Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 793. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about beaches and mosques, surfing and souks, riads and fortresses as we go to the coast of Morocco.
Cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Let's talk about Morocco. I'd like to welcome to the show Amanda Ponzio-Mouttaki from MoroccoMama.com, who's come to talk to us about Morocco. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
And what is your connection with Morocco?
So I have a very long history with Morocco, actually. The first time I came to Morocco was in 2003, and I met my husband on that trip. The person who was going to be my husband didn't know it at the time, but we ended up having a love at first sight relationship, got married within a year at 19 years old, and lived in the U.S. for about 9 years, and then decided we wanted to come back to Morocco in 2013 because our two oldest kids were 6 and 8. So we decided we wanted to move back to Morocco so that our kids could learn Arabic and French and have a connection to their family here. And we intended to stay for 1 year. And here we are almost a decade later, and we just haven't left.
Excellent. Well, and you also write about Morocco.
Yep.
And are doing tours in Morocco too, as I recall?
Yeah. So I do quite a bit of freelance writing, and my passion and my niche, I guess, if you would call it, is kind of food and culinary tourism. And from that and from my website, we started a food tour business in Marrakesh that is now branching out a bit. So we just love to introduce people who are coming to Morocco to the wide range of Moroccan food that is not tagines. So there's no tagines on any of my tours.
That's going to be my next question. Excellent.
No.
And why should someone go to Morocco?
So I think that Morocco is one of those destinations that is kind of on people's dream list. Like it's someplace that they think about, but it's someplace that seems really inaccessible or someplace that would take a lot of work or effort to get to. When in reality, it's just as easy as getting to Europe. So if you can get to
Mhm.
Europe, you can get to Morocco because there's a lot of connections either through Europe or even through the United States now. There's quite a few flights. And it's a country of contrasts. So you're going to get to experience everything. Like it can be as normal as you want it to be. Like I live in Marrakesh and I can go and do whatever I would do in any city around the world. Or it could be as unique as doing something wild that you never thought of, like sleeping under the stars in the Sahara Desert. And we have every single climate zone. We have cities, country, mountains, snow, the ocean, lakes, like literally everything that you can imagine actually exists in Morocco.
Excellent. Well, and I was telling Amanda before we started that we did a trip with amateur traveler listeners to Morocco a while ago now. I don't remember what year it was. And my wife came along, and it was a adventurous trip for her. I think it was a little past her comfort zone. And she even got sick halfway through the trip because we had an experience where we were out on a camel ride in the middle of a thunderstorm, which seemed like a bad idea. So we went back and tried to wait it out. And our camel drivers made us some tea that I don't think got cooked all the way through. So she ended up getting sick. And even with that, she still says it was her favorite trip ever. And you talk about the variety. She said from one day to another, she couldn't tell what century she was in. From the
Yeah.
modern city of Marrakesh to a hilltop jeet homestay to sleeping under the stars in the Sahara to the camel ride to the old salt mine city of Ait Ben Haddou. So it is an amazing country. And we're not going to talk about any of the destinations that I just mentioned. You've got some other places in mind. What kind of itinerary are you going to recommend for us?
Yeah, so the itinerary I wanted to talk about is the west coast of
Mm-hmm.
Morocco. Not often on tourist radars unless you're somebody who really is willing to get out and try something a bit different, but I think well worth it and really shows the diversity of Morocco. And I'm sorry if you can hear this. It's actually the morning call to prayer is sounding right now. I tried to go somewhere really quiet.
It would just lend atmosphere if I
Okay,
could. So
great. Okay,
that
good.
is part of the sound seeing scape of Morocco.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, where are you going to start us?
So I thought we'd start in Casablanca because
Okay.
that is where the vast majority of international flights come in, although you could come into Marrakesh too if you're coming through Europe. Marrakesh
Mm-hmm.
or Casablanca are where most come in. But I thought we'd start in Casablanca because it is where you're most likely to enter. And Casablanca itself is a interesting place. I think that it's the one place that I have the most people who ask me who say, I have to see Casablanca. And I say, no, you really don't. It's not the movie. It wasn't even filmed here. The movie Casablanca and actual Casablanca have very little to do with each other. But that being said, there are some things in Casablanca that I would start your trip off with. Your flight is probably going to come in the morning, so
Mm-hmm.
you'll have all day. You should go see the Hassan II Mosque, which is one of the largest mosques in the Islamic world. It's a beautiful piece of craftsmanship that was only built at the end of the 20th century. And it was built by contributions from everyday Moroccans. So basically, every single Moroccan in this country has donated money to build that mosque. And they all got a little certificate, like my mother in law has her little certificate. So it's something that's really special and it's a lot of pride for the Moroccan people. And it's one of the only mosques actually in the country that non-Muslims can enter. So if you do want to come and see a mosque, that's the best place to go.
Okay.
Something cool about it now too is they have a hammam, which is a traditional
Mm-hmm.
Moroccan bathhouse that is a part of the mosque complex. So that's kind of a really cool, unique experience that you could do if you wanted to. While you're there, you might also want to stop in Habous. It's a neighborhood that was actually built by the French in a bit of a, I don't know, quasi Orientalist style. They
Okay.
built it how they thought Morocco would look. So it's kind of like a Disneyfication, I guess, of what a traditional like Moroccan neighborhood would look like. It's
Okay.
interesting in that that's where there's like shops and there's some good, like there's a great bakery called the Benis Bakery, and it has like the best pastilla, which is a type of pie, like a stuffed sweet and savory pie, probably in the country. Like, it's my favorite in all of Morocco. So if you're there, definitely stop by there. From there, you have two options. You can either spend the night in Casablanca, which you're probably going to be tired. So it's a great idea. Just book your hotel, spend that night. And there's a great hotel called the Doge, which I think is worth going to Casablanca in and of itself. It's like an Art Deco dream. And that's a theme you'll see running through Casablanca is traditional Moroccan Islamic architecture, but a ton of Art Deco because the city was really, really built up during the French protectorate.
Okay.
And there's still a lot of those vestiges left. I'd also recommend stopping at a bakery called Madame Fahel, and it's actually a Jewish Moroccan bakery.
Okay.
And so they have a lot of traditional Moroccan dishes, like food, bakery, some kind of more heavy things, but they also have Moroccan Jewish influenced food, which I don't think a lot of people realize is part of Morocco's historical story. So once you spend the night and you're waking up the next day, we're going to head south. So Casablanca sits in the northern middle part of Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think of Morocco, it can be useful, especially if you're coming from a North American context, is that Morocco is basically the same size as California from north to south.
Okay.
And it has a lot of the same geographic zones as California. A lot of the cities are situated in really similar places. It's like if you put them on each other with a map, it's really interesting to see how they match up. So your Casablanca is going to be like probably like San Francisco-esque, like about the same. From there, you're going to go south to Al Jadida. And Al Jadida, again, so a lot of these places I'm going to mention, you probably have never heard of. If you've heard about Morocco, you've probably never heard of these smaller cities.
I have not heard of Al Jadida.
Yeah. So Al Jadida was actually a Portuguese city,
Okay.
part of the Portuguese colony. So Morocco was, most people know that Morocco was a French protectorate. It was never a colony, it was a protectorate. But it also was a part of the Spanish Empire. It was part of the Portuguese Empire. It was colonized partially by the Germans. So there's like a huge mishmash of European powers that were playing in Europe and the traditional Amazigh, you will probably know them as Berber tribes,
Mm-hmm.
the Arab rulers that came, Jewish settlers that came from Spain during the Inquisition, sub-Saharan Africans that came north and settled there. So it's a truly, truly a melting pot. Al Jadida is where you're going to get the Portuguese influence. And when you get to Al Jadida, you'll see this because there is a giant fortress that looks like you were in Lisbon. You could be in Lisbon. Like it looks just like something out of Portugal because it was built by the Portuguese. It's a small city and it's also very, very popular with Moroccans. So in the summertime, it's where Moroccans go for their summer holidays, for their summer beach holidays. So it's got great beaches, a very laid back vibe. You probably won't see many other tourists there. You can tour the ramparts of this old fortress, which you could do it in an hour or you could do it in a couple hours. There's also a really cool cistern that is here, like where the water used to be held, that was built by the Portuguese. And the cistern was hidden for a very, very long time until a guy who owned the shop next to where the cistern was wanted to expand his shop and broke through a wall, and a ton of water that had been sitting for God knows how long, like rushed out into his store. And this is just in the 20th century. And once the water was all gone, they looked through the hole and they were like, oh my God, what is this? Like nobody had remembered that it was there. Like it had been buried for ages and ages. And now it's obviously been restored as a historical monument. So you can go and you can tour it and they'll tell you the history. And it's really beautiful and eerie at the same time. And if you go when there's the call to prayer outside in the mosque, like the reverberation and the sound of it inside of the cistern is like, I don't know, it's just really something really special. It feels almost like a contrived thing, right? Like it's out of a movie or something like that. When you're here, there's not a ton of, I would say, great restaurants, right? Like it's a smaller city. You're not going to find world-class dining here, but you will find really good seafood. So all of these stops are going to have really good seafood. So if you're into fish, you're into seafood, this is an itinerary for you. If you're not so much into seafood, you might not like it as much when it comes to the food. But there is a place there called La Privée, which is a more upscale restaurant that you could try. And then there's like loads of smaller eateries that will be more inexpensive and have a variety of things. here, if you were deciding to stay here, so you could come and you could spend a half a day and keep going on your way on the route,
Hmm.
or you could spend the night. And if you decided to spend the night, there's a hotel here called La Iglesia, and it's a church that was turned
Okay.
into a boutique hotel, and they have a great restaurant too. But it's just a really cool, it's a beautiful place, and it's just a really interesting thing. Like you're sleeping in a church in Morocco.
Well, and I see that the old part of the city is a UNESCO World Heritage Site too, which means that some people have discovered it at least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are definitely people that go there, but I think it's not a lot of North Americans go there. So a
Hmm.
lot of these places, Europeans have been coming to Morocco for a long time. So
Right.
you're likely to find loads of French tourists.
Even some who were not trying to colonize it.
Yeah, they're just coming on vacation. So you will find tourists. You just might not find the English speaking variety so much.
Okay. A question for you. You mentioned beaches,
Hmm.
and I know when we were in Morocco, how conservative the area was depended a lot on where we were in the country. So if I'm at a beach in this part of the country, am I going to feel uncomfortable in usual Western beach attire? Well,
No,
I'm
not at
not going to
all.
wear a bikini because nobody wants that. But is somebody who does normally wear one at home going to feel uncomfortable?
No, I mean, on beaches, whether it's a pool or it's a beach, you're pretty much free to wear whatever you want. You cannot go topless,
Okay.
but as long as you're covered up, that's fine. And you can wear a one-piece swimsuit, you could wear a bikini. I will say, like, if you're wearing a one-piece string bikini or a thong bikini, like you will get a lot of attention. So you may want to opt for something that covers up a little bit more, but you can wear whatever you'd like on the beach. So if you were like, okay, you're on the beach and then you're like, oh, let me just head off to this restaurant nearby to get
Not into
something to
town.
eat.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like throw something back on. But otherwise you're good.
Excellent.
Ah, bon chien. Bonjour, je suis Theo, a tour leader with Explore, and this is Punti. He's helping us find truffles under the trees next to this beautiful vineyard. Maybe for tomorrow's cooking class? Oui, call semi heure. Parfait. Semi o'clock. Not everyone gets to enjoy a Bordeaux sunset this way, but you will if you explore. No, Punti. Search exploreworldwide.com and don't just travel. Explore.
These are violent criminals, so they're not going to go down easy.
ABC Tuesdays.
Let's get this done.
The Rookie is back.
We have 2 new rookies starting today.
Howdy.
Being a cop is stressful 24/7. Every year on the job is different.
And Training Day
We have a serial killer at large.
never ends.
We need an ambulance!
The Rookie. All new Tuesdays on ABC and stream on Hulu.
We're going to keep going south. So this route is just going to keep taking us south. And the next stop on this road is a city called Walidia. And it's another small city. And it became super famous because it is a hot spot for growing oysters.
Okay.
So that's how they got their claim to fame. So there's 2 places in Morocco that grow a lot of oysters. It's here and Dakhla in the very far south of Morocco. And there is a restaurant here, I want to make sure I pronounce that right, called Ostrea 2. Ostrea 2. I don't know what happened to the first one, but this is Ostrea 2.
Okay.
And they have all kinds of seafood, but it's a place to go. It's not anything super fancy. But if you want oyster tagine or oysters on a half shell or fried oysters or you name it, they've got all kinds of oysters. It does depend on the season. September, early fall is when the oyster season is. So if you're coming in July, there's not going to be any oysters. They also have a souk on Saturdays. So a lot of rural cities, and you had mentioned this, Chris, that you had gone to a rural market.
Right. Which is an experience. I
Yeah,
love a good rural market or a good big city souk.
yeah, for sure. So in these smaller villages, the market happens once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And
Market.
people, yeah, and people really use this as this is not, people are not doing this just for like fun on a Saturday. Like this is when people get all of their groceries, they do all their trading, they do all of their shopping. It's when they're making their money, it's when they're doing all of their things. But you're welcome to go and walk around, and I don't know. I've been to dozens of them, and I swear every time I go, I see something different that I'm not expecting.
Yeah, I think the one we went to, which was halfway between Marrakesh and the Atlas Mountains, you could get all your vegetables, all your produce, all those sorts of things. You could get horseshoes for your mule. You could get a mule.
I was going to say, you probably could get a mule too.
Oh, absolutely. You could get your dentistry done in the little alcove over there.
Yep.
So, yeah, pretty much everything.
Yeah, literally everything. It's wild. So you can go on Saturday if you're there. You're welcome to go and do that. It's also a place where a lot of people go for bird watching. So if you're somebody who's into birding, you probably haven't considered Morocco as a great destination for this, but we are in the migratory path for a lot of birds that come between Europe and more southern Africa for the winter, for the migration seasons.
So they're going further south. So I don't want to be there in winter for that. I want to be there in the shoulder seasons.
Yep. And I think there are specific seasons for different types of birds,
Makes
whatever
sense.
you're into. Not my interest level.
I understand.
But I know from a lot of people who are really crazy about birds, you can see all this flamingos, all kinds of interesting animal birds that fly through. And there's a lagoon area in Walidia. So you'll see a lot of birds and such there. And you can take a boat ride. So if you're somebody who's like, I would love to go out on the Atlantic Ocean and go fishing, or just take a boat ride, or take a smaller boat and just go across the lagoon, that's also possible if the deep sea is not your thing. That's all things that you can do in Walidia. If you're going to spend the night, there's two places that I would recommend. The most famous is called La Sultana, and it's a luxury. I'm not going to mince any words. It's a very luxury place to stay. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. They also have a great restaurant, but it's a splurge for sure. So something to keep in mind. And then another place that we really like is called Azalea Beach Cottage. And this is a very out of the way spot. So you have to go down a piece, and it's around a corner, and you're really away from people. So it's a great place to go if you're like, I'm somebody that really just wants to relax and get away from life and just be in nature and have the ocean and that sort of thing. So this is a great place to do that. If you're going to continue your trek, deciding if you're going to stay or continue, the next stop on the route is a city called Safi. And Safi is also a word you're going to hear a lot in Morocco. It means it's okay, or it's enough, or stop. It's one of those words that has plenty of different connotations. If you say someone Safi, 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 they'll say it means okay, 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 stop, stop, it's okay. But it's the name of this city also. And what this city is known for is pottery. So Morocco has some amazing pottery. And it's something that I know people love to take home with them. And the vast majority of pottery is actually made in this small city.
Okay.
Because the clay that is used for Moroccan pottery is found around here. So it made sense. They didn't have to haul the clay as far. And you can go and visit the workshops where they're processing the clay, they're making the pottery, they're firing the kiln, they're drying the pottery, they're painting the pottery, literally start to finish. It's just little workshops. It's not like it's done in a factory. There's different ateliers, different little workshops for each step of the process. So you can do that with or without a guide. If you have a guide, it's probably a little bit easier, especially if you don't speak French or Arabic. They can help you, but that's something that you can easily do. And if you have in your head that you want to get pottery while you're in Morocco, this is where to go to get the best deal, obviously, because it's coming directly from the source.
Well, and if people are not familiar with Moroccan pottery, I think you should picture brightly colored and more abstract designs than natural designs for obvious reasons.
Sure.
But very beautiful pottery. We loved it. We stopped at a potter on our trip as well. Not in this city, obviously, but beautiful pottery.
Yeah, for sure. You find it all over. And sometimes it's just they buy it from, you'll find different designs. And so sometimes they just buy the finished. I bought this bowl that is not completely finished, and then it's painted somewhere else. And then they finish the processing of it. So you'll find variations in styles and designs and colors and types.
Yeah, I think where we were, they were hand turning the pottery while we
Mm-hmm.
watched, so it was enjoyable to watch and very not modern in terms of the
Right.
technology. This was way out in the middle of nowhere, and the technology they were using hadn't changed in hundreds of years.
Yeah, yeah. Usually it's even in these shops where they're doing like hundreds and hundreds of things a day, hundreds of pieces. It's a wheel. It's a
Yep.
pottery wheel in their hands. And that's what they're doing all
Hard to
day, every
improve on
day.
it. It works. So
Yeah, why fix it if it's not broke, I guess. Here, I wouldn't necessarily say to stay here. So there are hotels if you're fine with your basic IBIS, think Holiday Inn, Days Inn. I guess you'll probably find like a very mid-level to lower level budget kind of places here.
okay,
And the same for food. This isn't a place that a lot of people go to spend the night or to spend more than maybe a day trip. So the amenities are a little bit less, but that also means you'll be able to get really more authentic Moroccan food because it's the Moroccan people are
Right.
actually eating it. So it's being cooked for Moroccan people.
well, and when you say ibis, for those who haven't been to France, it's a pretty typical economic French hotel chain.
Definitely. So like Super 8, I guess would be a good
that's
American
probably good, yeah.
comparison. Yeah, I think so. They're fine. They're basic. They're usually clean.
I've
They're
stayed in there
decent.
by
It's fine.
the Paris airport.
Yes, and that's usually where they are. They're usually in like small cities or by
Exactly.
the airport or by a train station. So after you leave Safi, the next spot is probably the biggest city on my route, which is Essaouira. And Essaouira is much more popular than most of these other places.
Right.
It's a little bit bigger, but it's still pretty small. It is a really lovely,
Walled city.
small, old city. Yeah, it was kind of got famous because it was in the Game of Thrones. Part of it was filmed in Essaouira. And it's really popular with people who like to windsurf. I think that's something not a lot of people know about Morocco. It's a very popular destination for windsurfing and surfing in general. And it's windy 98% of the time in Essaouira. So if you were somebody that does not like the wind, it might not be your favorite destination.
I loved Essaouira. Essaouira is the one place on your itinerary that I have been. But tell me if I'm wrong. Doesn't it seem to you that it's almost two different cities from two different centuries? You've got the old quarter that it's easy to wander around in and get lost in the walled city, and it's beautiful and gorgeous, and you can stay in a riad and an old mansion. And then you've got the beach and the newer part of town that seems completely different.
Yeah, but I think that's very common in most Moroccan cities. It's just that people who come to visit don't have as much experience with life outside of those older historical centers, right? So like if people come to Marrakesh, they never come to my neighborhood, trust me.
Right.
there's no tourists in my neighborhood in
Exactly.
Marrakesh. They're in the Medina. And so you have what's old and what's been there for centuries and centuries and centuries. And then you have the newer parts of the city where you still have some of those elements that are retained, but they're very different. So if you have the opportunity to go to some of these newer areas, I'll be honest, there's not a lot to see because it's just people living their life like they would anywhere. But it would give you a chance to see, I guess, what the difference is between what's old and what's new. And Essaouira is a great place to do it because it's very close. There's not a lot of distance between them.
Well, and as a photographer, I loved Essaouira for the fishing boats and its gorgeous little protected harbor. I happened to get there in a day that was not good for fishing because of the storms that were out. And one of the fishermen gave me an impromptu tour of the harbor and explained to me the different types of fishing boats there were and what these people were catching. And it was very enjoyable. And it was all just because I happened to wander through in the morning when he wasn't out fishing. So.
Yeah. And I love those small little interactions that you get. And I think if you are somebody who likes photography, for example, or you just like really connecting with local people and you're not too shy or afraid to do that, because I know some people find it can be a little bit uncomfortable.
Sure.
Essaouira is a great place to do it. I find people there are very open and welcoming. And in other parts of Morocco, it might not be that way. Like pictures can be a weird thing. I think it's something good for people to keep in mind, just because there are a lot of tourists, especially in hot tourist spots. And people just don't like to have their picture taken or don't like to be in pictures, except I find in Essaouira, I never have ever had an issue with it. I've never had an issue taking pictures. I don't know why, but they're cool with it. So
Interesting.
you should go to the port when you're in Essaouira. That's one thing that it's really known for. And they've just redone the inlet where the bigger ships come in and the area where the smaller ships go out. So they've just done a bunch of reinforcements in this area and cleaned it up and made it a little better for everyone. And it looks really nice too. So that's something that they've been working on in the last couple of years, and it's finished now, mostly finished.
If you go to the website and it has pictures of blue wooden boats in row upon row in what looks like a medieval fortress walls, that's probably from Essaouira.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fortress walls are still there. So you can go up in that. There's one in the harbor where those boats are that you can go up in. It's a small entrance fee. Then there's another one that's further along. It's called the Scala, that's further into the Medina area. And that's the other one is where Game of Thrones was filmed.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, there's like a long, I don't know what the right word for it is. I want to say like a corniche, but the corniche isn't the right word. It's just like a long alleyway sort of on top of the fort that has the pillars and the cannons, that line the whole thing, the Portuguese cannons. So this was a Portuguese city too. They're Portuguese cannons, and these are Portuguese built fortresses. So you can go on that, and that's something you should do. It's a very, very walkable Medina. So if you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get lost in here, you really won't, because there's truly only two main streets and then a couple little streets
keep walking, you'll get to a wall.
Absolutely. You'll get to a wall and you can just walk around the wall and you'll find your way out. So it's a good place to wander. If you are somebody who worries about getting lost, you really can't get lost here. You will get your way out. What else is here? So if you're interested in argan, which is an oil that is made only in Morocco, this is where it comes from. So Essaouira and further south into Agadir is where it's grown, where it's harvested, where it's made.
And that's the one from the nuts that grow in the tree with the goats.
With the goats, yes.
Okay.
So the story of the goats, you've probably heard of the goats. So Morocco does have goats that do climb in trees and do eat these nuts. That is a real thing that happens. However, if you see a very large tree that happens to have 20 goats standing in it, that is just for your entertainment and enjoyment only. They don't actually perch themselves in the tree like parrots, but they do normally go in the trees and eat the nuts. And there used to be a process where the goats would eat the nuts, they would digest the nuts, they would extrude the nuts, and then they would be gathered and cleaned and roasted and cracked and the oil extracted from it. And it's really quite a process to see the whole thing. They no longer have to go through the fermentation process, shall we say. They have found other ways to do that, since that's a little messy. So if you do opt for it, there's two types. You can either get regular argan, which is not roasted and it's used for cosmetic purposes, or there's the roasted type, which is used for culinary purposes. So it is edible. You could use the culinary one as a cosmetic, but you'll just smell like a roasted nut.
Not that that's a bad thing, but...
No, I mean, if you want to smell like that, it's good. But it's great for all kinds of things. And again, this is another, if you're looking for souvenirs from Morocco, this is a great one to pick up. And I'll give you a little trick to tell how pure it is. So sometimes the oil gets cut by regular vegetable oil or something because it is expensive.
Sure.
And a way to tell is you should be able to see through the bottle. So if you can't see through the bottle, that's already kind of like a indicator it might be of lesser quality because they're trying to conceal it a little bit.
Okay.
But if you shake it and you see bubbles, like a little bubble or two bubbles is not a big deal. But if you see many bubbles on the top, it's been cut, because pure argan oil won't bubble if you shake it because of its viscosity and its thickness.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Yeah, so you should definitely do that there. And where to stay. There are a lot of riads in Essaouira. So here, I feel like you could easily stay for a day or two. If you decided to come to Essaouira and you wanted to You skip Safi on the way up. You could stay in Essaouira and take a quick trip up to Safi another day, like as a half day or a day trip. Two places that we like here, there's loads of riads, like I said. Riad Emotion is one. And if you're more of like into self-catering type of things, it's called Jack's Apartments. And they're a mixture of little apartments and riad type of situations. Some of them are right on the beach, so that's really nice. But you can find a very wide range of cheap places because it's also a very popular spot with backpackers and whatnot. So you can find really cheap options and then you can find more higher end options. I want to touch on one other thing. Something you should see in Essaouira is there are a lot of synagogues in Essaouira. So at one time, Essaouira was about 50% Jewish and 50% Muslim. And there's a lot of work that's being done in Morocco right now to preserve the Jewish heritage sites of Morocco. So a lot of the synagogues are being renovated or revamped. I mean, a lot of them were closed, but the ones that still existed, like they're being renovated and revamped. The cemeteries, there's a Jewish cemetery, a Christian cemetery, and a Muslim cemetery in Essaouira. There's a church bell that goes off in Essaouira. I mean, it's a very multicultural, multi-religious place. So you should definitely check out the synagogue if you get a chance, just to get a sense of what Morocco's past was like.
And I assume that's in the Jewish quarter of Essaouira?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So if you see, the Jewish quarters of Morocco are usually called the Mellah.
Okay.
And you'll find them in most larger cities, even in some smaller cities. And it's not like a ghetto like in Europe. It's not that type of thing. It was just an area usually close to the palace where the Jewish community resided, and they had their own, even now, they had their own set of laws. They had their own way of dealing with family matters and inheritance and marriage. So all of that was protected. If you're here, obviously, again, seafood is going to be big. If you're into seafood, go to the port, go visit the port. Buy whatever you'd like. You'll see guys selling all types of creation that they pulled out of the sea. Literally everything. I remember the first time I saw a shark being sold and I was like, wow, okay, I don't even know what to do with that. So you can buy whatever you want. It's usually sold by the weight. And then you will also see in this area and in some other places too, but here it's the easiest, grills that are set up.
Okay.
And you can take what you bought, what you would like to have. You take it to the guys who have the grills. They'll cook it for you. You pay them, I don't know, 20 or 30 dirham, $2 or $3, maybe $5, depending on how much you have. They grill it for you, and then they'll have little Moroccan salads, maybe some bread. They'll get you soda if you want, or water, bottles of water. And it's kind of like a little pop-up restaurant type of thing, but it's very, very rustic. So don't expect anything. Expect plastic tables and pieces of paper for napkins. But if you want fresh seafood cooked right on the spot, it doesn't really get much fresher than that. If you prefer something that's a little bit less rustic, there's a great restaurant called Umia, and it's probably one of the nicer restaurants in Essaouira, and they have a mix of Mediterranean dishes. Obviously, again, it'll be pretty seafood heavy, but they have vegetarian. They probably even have vegan if you're somebody who has a different dietary type. Another place that I like is called the Mandala Cafe. So they have brunch things. They have keto things on their menu. So if you're really looking for something that's not Moroccan or slightly Moroccan influence, it's a good place to go. And it's a great place to have a cup of coffee. They have great, fantastic coffees. So if you want to sit and watch people and have a great cup of coffee, it's a great place to go.
Yeah, I think by the time we got to Essaouira, we had been to a lot of places that only had tagine, which is a traditional Moroccan dish, as we alluded to in the beginning, made in those clay pots and always made in a dozen different styles. Very good, but we were a little tired of it. I think we went to pizza in Essaouira.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Like this is the whole reason we started our food tour company, was that the first time I came to Morocco, I still cannot really eat chicken and lemon tagine. Like we ate so much tagine that I was like, if I never see Moroccan food again, which is funny given what I do now, but it will be too soon because it was the same thing all the time. So there is diversity. I swear, I promise there's diversity. It just takes a little more work to find it.
Well, and it's easier to find, I think, in the bigger cities too, obviously.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, you have everything. And the thing is, Moroccan people don't go out to eat Moroccan food. So any Moroccan food that you eat outside, unless it's like in a gas station on the highway, which actually has some of the best Moroccan food, believe it or not. They do not eat Moroccan food. They're like, why would I go out to eat Moroccan food when I can make it at home for a quarter of the price?
I've run into that in a number of countries. Yep.
Yeah. Finding really, really good Moroccan food in restaurants is a challenge.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. So we're nearing the end of my itinerary, but I have a couple options for you at the very end. You can keep driving south, and the road from Essaouira to Agadir is probably my second favorite drive in all of Morocco, because you will wind through the forests where the argan trees are, and then you will go up this mountain. I don't know if I'd call it a mountain, maybe a really, really big hill. You go up, and then once you get to the top, you see the ocean off the cliff. And then from there to Agadir, which is about, I don't know, 35, about 40 miles. It's like the Pacific Coast Highway, right? Like you're hugging the ocean. It's right there. The waves are coming up. There's these giant vistas and expanses of the coast right there. And it's just gorgeous. And we don't get a lot of bad weather in Morocco. So your chances of doing it when the sun is shining and it's a clear blue sky are really, really good. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a beauty. There's plenty of places you could stop. You wanted to get out and just take it in or go for a little walk or whatever. You can totally do that. 2 places along that road to stop. One is called Tamri, and it's also known as the Banana Village. So bananas do grow in Morocco. And when you get to this village, which you have to drive through on this road, you will see bananas quite literally everywhere. And it's very strange because it's just like this weird little tropical hiccup that happens in the Moroccan landscape. But you can buy papayas and bananas. That's what they grow a lot of. So get your banana fill here. They're super, super cheap, super delicious. And then the other place is Tagazout. So Tagazout is another one of those places where you're like, am I really in Morocco? Because it is a hippie surfing village. Like, that's what people go for, is surfing. It has a very, very different vibe to anywhere else in Morocco. It's extremely laid back. There may be a little bit of smoking happening there. You didn't hear it from me. And if this is something that you're interested in, where you're like, I just want to go to the beach, want to hang out, I'd love to learn how to surf, I want some place that just has a really relaxed vibe, it's a great place to go. And here you could probably get away with wearing your bikini anywhere you wanted and nobody would care, because it's just very chill, very laid back place. And then you'll hit Agadir on this road. There's loads of places to stay in Tagazout. So honestly, I would say, if you like this type of style and environment, stay in Tagazout, because once you get to Agadir, it's a lot of all-inclusive hotels.
Yeah, I think of it as a pretty modern city.
Yeah.
At least the part that I saw was very modern.
Yeah, and that's accurate, because Agadir was destroyed by an earthquake in the 1960s.
Well, there you go.
The city was. Yeah, so it was rebuilt. But it's all-inclusive hotels, and I don't know, it just doesn't have the same charm or character, I guess, as most other Moroccan cities. So
yeah, okay, I'd give you that.
Yeah. So from Agadir, you can either keep going further south, which is totally possible, but Agadir is also where the Moroccan toll highway starts or ends, depending, I guess, on which way you're going.
Got it.
So you can pick up the toll highway there, and you can head back to Casablanca, and you can be back to Casablanca in about 4 or 5 hours, depending on how things are going.
And that would be going through or near Marrakesh?
It would skirt Marrakesh. So you could detour and go to Marrakesh, but the road is about 25 miles west of where Marrakesh should be.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You have to really make a detour to get into Marrakesh.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a modern highway that it does have tolls, but it's great conditions, easy, quick drive. So you could either start from Casablanca and take the highway all the way to Agadir and work your way north, or you could start in Casablanca and work your way south and turn yourself around, back up and go north.
Well, you were describing a self-drive trip, so we should talk a little bit about driving in Morocco. Anything people need to know?
Sure. So two things I would say. You could self-drive this. It's also fairly affordable to hire a driver. So you
Okay.
could hire a driver to do this route. If you're like, I don't really feel comfortable doing this, you're probably looking at $120 to $150 a day, which if you rent a car and you can't drive a manual or you don't want to drive a
Right.
manual, it probably will be in the $75 to $100 a day range for an automatic vehicle,
Okay.
because they don't have smaller vehicles that are automatics. You have to rent like a 4x4 type of thing that has an automatic.
Got it.
If you do decide you want to drive, be very diligent with tracking any bumps, scratches, anything that is
Okay.
on the car when you get it. And then be very diligent that everybody signs off on everything when you bring the vehicle back so you don't have any surprise charges.
Okay.
And also, you'll want to know that police checkpoints are really common.
Hmm.
So I found that when I've had a lot of American visitors, they've been like, oh my gosh, what is going on? There's so many police stopping us. I'm like, there's nothing going on. This is just how it is. They're just out there because that's their job. That's what they do. Check to make sure that everybody's being good and following the rules. And you probably will get stopped once or twice, and they'll want to see your papers and they'll want to know what's going on. And most of the time it's fine. And sometimes they might be like, oh, you did this and you did that. So do have cash, because you may need to pay a fine on the spot, whether it's an imaginary fine or a real fine.
Hmm.
I'll put it that way.
Got it. Excellent. And that kind of wraps up your itinerary.
Hmm.
Anything else that we need to know before we get into some of our wrap up questions?
No, I mean, I think that's it. I think this is a great itinerary for people who really just want to relax and enjoy their time. You're not
Hmm.
people who like the hustle and bustle of a city, but you really like the idea of going to someplace new, taking your time and soaking in a different culture. I think this is a great itinerary for you.
Excellent. You are standing in the prettiest spot in this part of Morocco. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
Oh, good question. I think I'm in Essaouira. There's something charming about Essaouira, standing on the edge of one of those fortresses looking out at the sea, but it's also very meaningful to me personally. So I think that's my spot.
Hey, I completely endorse that. Well, I also collect, and this is an odd thing. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on the show. I have a collection of old doors photographs.
Okay. Okay.
And Essaouira is just this gold mine of old medieval doors and just a beautiful photogenic city, as
Yeah,
well as
absolutely.
an enjoyable, livable city, I think, too. I visited with some fellow travel bloggers who were playing the part of expats in the modern part of the city and living near the beach. And I think it's
Okay.
both. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
excellent. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Morocco.
Oh my goodness. I feel like I have these moments every single day. I think it's seeing exactly what can be put on a motorcycle
Mm-hmm.
and how many people can actually fit on a motorcycle. Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me. Like literally nothing surprises me anymore though. So there's nothing that I see in my day to day where I'm like, oh my goodness, I'd never have seen that. I'd be like, wow, that yeah, it's wild. It's a crazy place. You will see things that you never imagined possible.
And I believe that that answer has been given now for at least 3 continents.
Is it true? That's so funny.
I think if you grew up in the West, if you grew up in
Yeah.
an industrialized nation, you just never get over whether it's Vietnam or Morocco or someplace else where you see the family of 6 on the motorcycle. So, or the washing machine. I think they saw a washing machine one time.
Oh wow. Yeah, I mean yesterday or earlier this week I saw a guy that had like he was on the back and he was holding like an 8-foot tall piece of glass.
Oh wow.
And I was like, oh, this could go so
Oh.
bad.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize this region of Morocco in just 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Laid back,
Okay.
dreamy,
Okay.
and juxtaposition.
Okay. Just because the difference is right next to each other?
Yeah. Yeah. The
Okay.
difference, old and new, religions, people, fairly conservative with very much more liberal. I think you get a little bit of all of it.
I believe you get bonus points for coming up with a 5-syllable word for your 3 words.
Ooh.
So
I won the Wordle. Yay.
that's right. Excellent. Our guest again has been Amanda Mouttaki from MoroccoMama.com. And Amanda, if we're going to send people to your best post on this coastal area, where are we going to send them?
So I have a post on that stretch from Essaouira to Agadir, but I also have a link specifically for your readers if they want to plan their trip to Morocco. I have a free guide on my site, so if you want to put it,
don't worry about it.
yeah, you can link to it. You can throw it up there, and if they want to plan their Morocco dream vacation, I've got a great workbook that's for free. You guys can have at it.
Excellent. Well, and you can find those links obviously on Amanda's site, or we'll link to them from the Amateur Traveler show notes and also from the lyrics of this episode, where you'll find all the links for the things we talked about. Amanda, thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your obvious love for Morocco.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope that I see some of the listeners in Morocco sometime soon. We would love to have you here.
I'd like to thank the patrons of the show. I usually say who support the show financially, and that is true, but they also just support me, and I really appreciate that. And special thanks to our latest patron, who is Kathy Atkin. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/amateurtraveler. I've got some fun episodes of Amateur Traveler coming up, including the Texas Hill Country, Guatemala, and Antigua and Barbuda. I should mention that if you're interested in being on Amateur Traveler, go to amateurtraveler.com/pitch.me and read what I'm looking for. If you listen to the show, you probably have a good idea already, and then drop me an email to host@amateurtraveler.com. With that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have a question, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And as always, thanks so much for listening.